And actually, what's interesting, I think what happened from that conversation with Guillermo is that we realized that like there's a lot going on there. I mean, and I'm not, I'm really not, here to litigate anything, but I do think there was like a movement to sort of like get rid of CSS and JS, in part for good reasons, because of the performance issues. Also, you have to implement all these compiler plugins, right? Like, so it's a lot of work to maintain as a framework. It's a lot of work to integrate with all these plugins. It can be slow, and I think like even with like, for example, React Server components, there was like some problems where it was even slower because of the streaming, and then you have streaming styling, and that it's causing all sorts of jumps and jitters. So like basically, it was just a no-go.
Hey there, everyone, welcome to yet another Discovering Your Thing session. This is episode number 64, and today we'll be learning how to build full stack web apps with React using One, which is the hot new React framework right now, and Tamagui. So I have the creator here with me. He's going to introduce himself, and we're going to talk about what he's been up to with One and Tamagui. How you doing, Nathan?
Hey, doing well. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I am currently, just for everyone's context, why I'm in a hotel room is I'm currently traveling with my wife in Asia. So yeah, we're just we haven't traveled actually in a long time. So getting some in, but yeah, wanted to say hi. So hopefully the internet holds out.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you for still making out the time to do this. So why don't you start off by introducing yourself? Tell us who Nathan is, and you probably need to wrap up with a fun fact. I like fun facts. How about yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. So my name's Nate. I feel like for the last decade or so, at least in terms of like software, I've been doing a lot of like dev tools and kind of just trying to make things easier and simpler, I would say, especially for, I got into React, I think, very early, and I thought it was really cool. I thought it was like a huge step forward from like what we were doing before that, which was like, I mean, you were lucky if you were using like Backbone or something like that, but a lot of people were just doing jQuery at the time and stuff like that. Or I was doing Rails actually, so I'm a big fan of Sails actually. So I was doing a lot of Rails stuff, JavaScript, with what was it, PJAX and all this stuff sprinkled on. But yeah, so I kind of like stepped into the Rails world and then just kind of got from there. I've always been just trying to make it better, and I think it's interesting. It's kind of a cool to be talking with you because I feel like it's still to this day, which is really surprising to me. We haven't really reached kind of that level of cohesion and kind of that level of like, especially when you start adding in rich client-side apps and when you add in native apps, especially. I think that was something that during the pandemic I was sort of playing around with some stuff after I had shut down my company, the DevTools company before that I had been doing. So yeah, so just kind of like I like design. Actually, I like front end. I like kind of like simplifying front end architecture and all that stuff. And fun fact, um, I guess sort of a interesting fun fact is that I'm super flexible. I have like kind of like a loose collagen, so I can like touch my thumb to my like arm and like do all sorts of weird stuff like that. Yeah, so
Nice.
kind of random.
Yeah, that's a fun fact. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing. Yeah, thank you so much. So I think we should start a little bit backwards before we get to one, which is like the hot new thing. So I got to know about Tamago. I think I've heard about it somewhere on the internet, like maybe a while back, but I didn't really pay much attention because I found my CSS abstraction that works for me. But I got
Mm.
to hear about it again from One. So after you announced One, I checked you out and I saw you also work on Tamagui. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Then I looked at it again and then I was like, okay, cool. This is like a CSS-in-JS thing. Of course, I just know like the high level. And then was it Guillermo? The old thing with CSS-in-JS didn't work and
Mm.
Tailwind is working because of XYZ. I was like, okay, this is interesting. And I do know about StyleX, which is sort of like something like Tamagui. But I was like, okay, people do use this stuff. So even if, because why I like this show is even I don't get to use a lot of the tech I get to learn on this show, but just knowing that people use it and these are the different ways because the web is diverse. I like to see how people build. So I want to talk about Tamagui first because CSS, of course, is a pain for web development, especially when you're writing the
Yeah.
CSS file. So how did that happen? Like walk us through, like, okay, because of course there were other CSS-in-JS solutions before Tamagui. Why did you make it and what was the value prop for you? Hello there, friend. So it has come to my attention that about 95% of the people who watch the videos on this channel don't subscribe. My goal is to get that number down to 50%. So if you're watching this video and you've liked it so far, please do consider hitting that subscribe button. I would really appreciate if you do. Now let's get back into the video.
Yeah, that's a good way to kind of set it all up. And yeah, the Guillermo thing was kind of funny. I think like that's like its own little side quest, but I do think that, there's a lot of interesting history here. I mean, I guess I guess I've tried to do different styling solutions on React like a few times before even Tamagui. I had kind of like a whole thing that I had built that was web only, kind of a CSS and JS type thing, but with an optimizing compiler. I think that was kind of the angle that I had found that I thought was very interesting. And actually, there's some prior art here that's pretty cool. The Tamagui compiler actually kind of like started as a fork of this compiler called JSX style, and JSX style was really cool. It was kind of a very simple inline style props thing, maybe similar to Chakra or something like that. Um, and then it had a compiler, which I thought was very interesting because it makes things. It kind of gets rid of that problem of CSS and JS that a lot of people think it has. And this is what the whole thing with Guillermo kind of was surrounding, which is like I think a big part of the reason that you could say it's dying or it's died off is that it was kind of slow because it had runtime styling and it was doing stuff in JavaScript. And so it sort of like was not ideal, but it was much, people liked it because it was much better, kind of like on a developer level. It was nice to write your styles in JavaScript and also to write them inline. I think that's actually something that's in an interesting way Tailwind sort of takes after. I think Tailwind almost comes after in a sense, timeline wise. Like CSS and JS was kind of popular because of this like inline styling and being able to have your components encapsulate your styles without having to think about cascading and all this stuff, right? And so CSS and JS I think kind of popularized that, and then Tailwind sort of like brought it back to CS to like to whatever HTML and CSS in a sense. So it's kind of interesting the progression there. And then I call it like the new generation of CSS and JS, which is like these ones that do compile and are fast. They have a build step, so they don't have runtime styling. Work to integrate with all these plugins. It can be slow, and I think like even with like for example React Server components, there was like some problems where it was even slower because of the streaming, and then you have streaming styling, and that it's causing all sorts of jumps and jitters. So like basically it was just a no-go. And so it was like, okay, let's get rid of it. And I think that was fine. My beef there was just like, not every CSS and JS had that problem, right? So like by constantly sort of like pushing, like, get rid of it, it's dead, it was kind of hurting what I did and what other people did, Panda CSS, Vanilla Extract. There's a bunch. I'm gonna blank on like the rest, but there's a bunch of really good newer generation, you could say, CSS and JS, StyleX, of course. And so, yeah, so I was just kind of like a little pissed, that like, let's be a little bit more careful with how we sort of message around that, because actually, if you look at like the NPM stats and stuff, like style components is actually like super popular. It's like, I think it's now at like half as popular as Tailwind, but like, that's half as popular as Tailwind. That's really popular. And then if you add all the CSS and JS libraries together, I think they're very close. It's a very similar amount of popularity. So the narrative online, if you're on Twitter a lot, is that it's dead or something. But the reality is that it's actually very much alive. And I think it's great. It's got great upsides. Types, your styles work with types. Like, I know I'm going to start ranting because you touched on a very great topic for me, but yeah, but basically, like, you've got a bunch of upsides. You've got it's super nice to, like, some things you can even compare to Tailwind is, like, you can destructure your styles, you can change them, you can rebuild them up into a new object, you can pass that object around. Like, you're really just dealing with your programming language. And I think that's been always the kind of like what you wanted. And so actually what's interesting is from that whole Guillermo thing, which is kind of cool, I think a lot of positive came out of that, which is that one, I finally got to sort of like say my piece. I think that was nice. I got to like say what I wanted to say, and I think and I'm glad I did. And then also, I think that like we started chatting. I started chatting with a few of the different like modern kind of CSS and JS libraries, and I think we've just decided to rename it. We're gonna come up with a new term, and we're just gonna kill. CSS and JS is dead. Let's go ahead and kill it, because we're just gonna come up with a new term for the new generation. I think I don't know what the names are yet. We're sort of playing around with cat, I think. So like, what is it, like composable atomic typed styling, cat
Mm.
CSS or something like that. But like we're figuring it out. I don't know what it's going to be, but we'll have like some sort of announcement. We'll all the libraries will sort of endorse it, and we'll just come up with a new name. And I think that's a good idea. Like if something is sort of bad and it's mixed in with the good, why not just separate them and come up with a new name? And so I think these new generations, it's worth checking out. If you're listening to this and you haven't really had much experience, I think you may think like CSS and JS is dead, and I think it's actually not. It's actually got really great upsides. And if you like Tailwind, I think it's got a lot of those upsides of short styling, easy to type, inline, all that stuff. But it also adds kind of like typed and a few other things that you may like. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. It's it's kind of interesting, especially with the whole talk of a tech being dead. Like, one thing I sort of, I don't know, it's bittersweet in our industry is it's very, if you try something like a couple of years ago and it didn't work for you, I really don't understand the mental model that leads us to think that that thing just froze. There's no longer going to be
Yeah.
improvements. It's not going to get. It's always interesting to me when I see such arguments. Be like I don't use CSS and JS, but I don't dim it there because I know a lot of work is being done in that area. I know Shegun, who made Panda CSS. I love his work. So
Mm.
I've been seeing this stuff. Like, I've been watching even back in the early days of Chakra UI. I was like on the core team trying to make a port for Vue. So people use this stuff, they like it, right? So I feel it's okay to not want to declare something dead just because it didn't work for you. And again, it's a snapshot, like it's years ago. Can't you just, have you tried it recently? Like, anytime someone says something like something is dead, I ask, when was the last time you tried it? Because it's very
Yeah.
important for us to know when was the last time you tried it. Because if you tried it 10 years ago, it's outdated. Like, how about we, keep an open mind, just check it out. So I don't think CSS in JS is. I don't. In fact, if you ask me, I don't think you all should change the name, because the people who really know and
Mm.
have the value prop that really like it, they're gonna use it no matter what whoever says anything. And Twitter is a cesspool, right? People make dumb claims all the time. They're gonna be like, "Oh, this is dead."
Yeah.
Don't use jQuery, but people use jQuery. People love jQuery, right? So I feel it's just, it's the Twitter street
Yeah.
or the X street. It's always gonna be like that. But it was
Yeah.
really fun to see how you were able to, like, hold your own, because it is a when someone with that kind of a reach sort of like say stuff like that, it's not just saying, right? There's a lot of people that are listening, especially when he's being respected in the industry. So his opinions are more like sort of like gospel in most circle. So it's okay to like be like, dude, this stuff ain't dead. So I'm I'm actually curious, right? Because I'm checking out StyleX, I'm checking out Spider CSS, and also Tamagui. So when you mention about how you like the composability, so now I'm thinking in my mind, like, why didn't this thing click for me? So I want to know from like someone who really digs CSS in JS, right? Because one thing you should know about me, first of all, I don't really like abstractions really quickly. Like,
Yep.
it's recently I started using like a component library, like after all these years, because when I learned Tailwind, I find it like it was easy to like, I like to understand the thing that I'm writing. Even if you're going to do a lot of work for me, I need to like, okay, I need to dig this, I need to understand it. So I've been using Tailwind without any component library until I found like one that it gave me the right amount of abstraction. Like I call it dose. Like sometimes when the abstraction is just too much, I just like an overdose for me, and I'm like, no, I do not want this. So when I saw Tailwind, it was more like, okay, this is the proper amount of abstraction. It looks just like CSS. I know there are a lot of work being there, but just CSS. So the what I'm talking about is like the API for me, like me, the consumer, the kind of the things I need to learn to use this. It's sort of like it was a little bit easier. So for you, what was that thing for CSS in JS like? Because I know a lot of people use it, even Facebook, like Facebook, Instagram, and a lot of people like they swear by it. So I really want to understand from the mind of someone who really uses this tech, why is it so more enticing than every other thing out there?
Yeah. No, I mean, I appreciate all you said there. I think covering just like so much ground.
Mhm.
I even think honestly, maybe we should keep the name and just maybe we just put like a
Yeah,
plus or something, you know. But
yeah,
yeah,
or V2.
but yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm sort of thinking now is like super CSS or something. But yeah. So I think well, one thing that I also forgot to answer in your first part that sort of answers this
Yeah,
part too is like because you sort of said like why Tamagui specifically, and I think I just answered like why the new
yeah,
generation, but like I was actually building an app. I was looking into building a app during the pandemic, sort of kind of like burnt out from a startup, and I wanted to build something that was kind of like imagine like a Yelp, like I wanted to do like kind of a cool take, like different social aspects, kind of more small network focused. Oh, did my okay? Sorry, my network. But yeah, I kind of wanted to do let's just imagine like a Yelp like app, like local search, local recommendations between friends and stuff like that. And in my mind, it sort of is like this app that needs to have a web site because it needs to have search engine. Like obviously, like any sort of review or recommendation site needs to have pretty good search engines for traffic, but it also needs a mobile app because it has to, work on your phone, or else that's when you're looking for stuff, trying to find like a food or whatever. So I immediately was like, okay, well, it's got to be cross-platform. I actually hadn't worked that much with React Native. Like I had played around with it, but I hadn't done a lot. So I actually chose Swift UI first. I wanted to play with it. It was somewhat new. I thought it'd be kind of cool, and I wanted to try and play like make like I was trying to like make this like really cool interface. I thought it was really, I like design. I wanted to try and make a really interesting interface, and um, so yeah. So basically, like long story here. I guess I'm getting into things, but I just kind of like play with Swift UI. It was kind of janky at the time. This was pretty early. There was a lot of things breaking. I couldn't get this one animation at all to like not be completely stuttery, and I was like surprised. And then I eventually played with React Native. I was playing with that, and I just was surprised at how clunky it was to style. Because I'm coming from CSS, I'm pretty good. Like I grew up on CSS. Like I'm considered like good at CSS, I guess. So like uh, and when you have hot reloading and everything, and you can just do like hovers and pseudo styles and media queries and all this stuff, like it doesn't have any of that React Native. So I tried Dripsy, which is a friend of mine, Fernando's library, and Dripsy is kind of like it's got all the goodies in it, but it doesn't have any optimizing at all. So it's actually very slow on both web and native. And so basically, like very, very slow because you're adding all this overhead to just run all that JavaScript and stuff like that. And like I had said, I had done this sort of compile time stuff. So I was like, it'd be interesting. Actually, that would be kind of legitimately new is like if I actually optimized to native on native, but also optimized to web on web. And then it just sort of grew from there because that sort of worked. And then I wanted all the features. Like so what I'm trying to say also too is like I get your sort of desire to avoid abstraction, to use things that don't, you don't want to buy into something that's not going to last, and also that's not going to, it's just not something that's fundamental, that's kind of like here to stay, that's kind of good to other people know, and you can like share that. So I totally get that. I guess what I'm trying to say is, well, one is I do like that the React Native style API is very close, and actually in the long term they're trying to align it to the CSS style API as much as possible. So fundamentally we are aligned to like the CSS style APIs just in JavaScript. I like that aspect. I think that's nice because it does let me just stick to Flexbox and all that stuff. So to me, that's a big part of it. And then the second part of it is just that like, I'm just like I'm working backwards from what I needed rather than like I think Tailwind is cool because it's kind of like it's constrained to the web. It does a really good job. That makes it much easier for them to sort of like choose an abstraction that is quite quite light and quite nice. And then like now they're trying to bring it to native. It's quite hard. It's a lot of work. I think native Windows doing that. I think they'll pull it off. But there is a lot going on. Like if you look at how it's implemented, it's like patching like the JSX constructor function. It's patching React.create element. It's like patching the bundler to do things. Like it's got a lot that it has to do to make like class name and CSS work on native. A lot. Whereas Tamagui is, because it's just kind of like wrapping things, it's just where it's actually like you don't need to set up anything. Actually, it used to be you had to set up stuff, but you don't have to set up anything at all with like Tamagui to make it work on native or on web. We worked really hard to make that so that it's just no config, no bundler plugin, nothing like that. But if you do add the bundler plugin, then you do get it to optimize fully all the way to like really, really optimal, almost ideal actually, like CSS on the web, but and like DOM, like it actually flattens your nodes. So the output is actually just a div with like class names, just like Tailwind, but you're writing like typed components, which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool that you're like getting like typed. You can abstract it by nesting styled and add variants, and like you get these really nice types with like all your tokens typed and everything typed, like your variable CSS variables typed and all that stuff. But then at the end of the day, what's being output is like actual, ideal sort of like flat, no like nested React components, which is another big killer of performance. So I would say that's both the big pitch of Tamagui, also why Tamagui feels a bit more abstracted. And in the long run, my goal is actually to get as close as possible to kind of standards. I think that's what we've realized is like, yeah, I think the big reason why a lot of people don't choose it now is that it's sort of a lot. First of all, it's got UI, it's got styling, it's got like all this stuff. I think our goal is to like make it feel as much like the web and just like we're just kind of like very light as possible. And I think we've got a long way to go. But yeah, that's kind of
Yeah,
what we want to do.
yeah, that's awesome. And I'm also saying that especially in terms of footprint, Tamagui is like 24 KB. The core
Mm.
itself, that's really interesting with little dependencies and all. That's dope. So I think we should be so let's probably this
Yeah.
might be a good way to advocate for like the new era of CSS in JS, because most people won't understand the difference, right? And especially because the devil is in the detail. So I want us to do a little bit of comparison between how CSS in JS would work in the classic runtime pattern, right? And because I feel, so you could correct me if I'm wrong, I think Tailwind is always at build time, but of course in dev, right? So it's always going to make that CSS file for you in dev. But at
Mm.
build time, it's not on runtime, right? Like no, like you don't compile that on every request. It's static, right? So how does it compare for CSS in JS? Like how was it in runtime world? Like runtime CSS in JS. Even if Tamagui is going to be runtime, let's use that as a case study. How does it differ from today, which is more static compile time? And yeah, so we should paint a picture of how those both world works to sort of like give us a clear understanding of what's better with this. Mm.
Yeah, and I mean, we could probably show it at some point here, like if, in a
Yeah.
bit. I think we can probably like show the difference of the output by turning on and
Mhm.
off the compiler. It's actually pretty easy to show
Oh,
that, I
nice.
think.
Hmm.
But I mean, on a high level, yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just if you have the compiler off on the web, it's going to, render a React component, and then it's gonna like turn your props into an array of essentially CSS with class names. And then it's gonna, it depends on actually if you're on React 19, we actually are starting to use the new React 19 stuff where you can just throw a style tag in, which is kind of cool. Or at least there's an option to do that. If you're on React 18, which most people are, then it would just use a use insertion effect, which is kind of like a special type of an effect that's specifically actually for inserting CSS, and it will insert CSS as it renders. If it's a new, it keeps track obviously of whether it's new or not, and inserts it if it needs to. So if you're building like a spa, like a client side app, mostly it actually I think you're mostly fine. Like it's not going to really, it's going to be a little bit of performance. I always would recommend to turn on the compiler once you're ready to ship, because I don't think it's too hard to do that. But I think if you're not shipping yet, it's really nice that you have the option not to. And I think that's basically the benefit is. And I will say what's kind of interesting and maybe stands Tamagui apart too from some of the other kind of like new generation CSS and JS type libraries is that it it does support both, and a lot of them don't. Like, vanilla extract is kind of like only compile time, like kind of like Tailwind, I guess. You can't really do dynamic styling. I think they actually do have dynamic styling. I don't want to get that wrong. I think they
Mm-hmm.
have that in some form now, but it's like a little bit limited by kind of like what the compiler can do. And don't quote me on that. Sorry, Naman. But I do know that I think Panda has a similar thing. Again, I haven't gone deep with any of these libraries recently, especially, so I don't want to be too like strong on it. But I'll just speak to what makes Tamagui kind of cool, which is that it does support 100% of the features at compile time and at runtime, which means that you can compile most things, but you're not like stuck. If you really do need a dynamic style, you're animating something based on like a user input or based on like some random thing that, some database data that you've generated, and you want to like build something off of that and animate to like some value, maybe that's like scroll position, right? Like all these sort of dynamic type of cases. What's cool is that it does all the features work at runtime and compile time. And that's actually kind of a product of their whole React Native thing, because React Native essentially is always runtime. Like we do have a compile optimization step, but all that is doing is sort of like doing the flattening and sort of like the basically the flattening. Like it's sort of just getting rid of some of the layers, but it's still at the end just rendering to a JavaScript object that React Native handles, which is ultimately what the only thing React Native supports. So I think it's actually kind of it's a funny fallout of the limitation there. But yeah, we got it down to 24 kilobytes, which I think is not too bad, especially for the amount of features it has, because we have a lot of features. And you can actually, I would love to get a zero runtime mode. Like that's our downside, is that as of yet, we don't have the full on zero runtime where you completely get rid of everything. We would have to just enable that, and that would just be like, we'd have to have some rules that you can't have those dynamic, those dynamic cases. It would have to like error if you did. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome stuff. So now I'm thinking, is there a reason why I would, like aside from everything you said about dynamics, that I'm pretty sure Tamagui in compile mode would also take care of, making sure like all my conditional CSS would work. Yes?
Yeah, so what it does is it does handle, it's actually doing full on like analysis of your code. So it'll even
Okay.
look at like ternaries and like
Okay.
spreads, and
Mm-hmm.
it'll try and like analyze those fully. If
Okay.
it can't though, then it does bail out and just leave it unoptimized. So that's kind of how it works today, is that it tries to,
Oh.
it even goes like multiple levels into ternaries. It handles object spreads, stuff like that. That's pretty advanced. It even runs like a node VM
Mm.
it creates a little virtual machine and tries to evaluate. It passes in all the contextual variables that are in that file and also in other files sometimes that you can whitelist. Like it's really advanced, and honestly, a lot of that comes from JSX style. They had done a lot of that work, and I just kind of like kept it, tried to clean up some of it, tried to like get it to work with all of our features because we have a lot more features. But for the most part, they did a lot of that crazy like work, and I was just like I honestly think, like, I don't know why I kept a lot of it around, because it's so advanced, and it's like I don't know if anyone even understands that it does this stuff. And it honestly, like, at the end of the day, like, I think the difference is mostly whether or not you have zero runtime or not. Like, that's for at least websites that really care about this initial load. For runtime performance, it really helps, but like I don't think people care that much about like eking out all this runtime performance unless you're like in a very sensitive app. So it's a lot of work for maybe a little benefit in terms of promotion, but it is quite cool. So I like to keep that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
quite cool, really. It's really, really quite cool. It does sound, because when you think about the problem and the CSS in JS way, you definitely need to do work on runtime. I think old way, because of course, how do I know what style to apply special for? Because this is modern UI, a lot of things are being changed. Like when you hover on the button or you do stuff, you're adding a loading spinner declaratively, and you have to do runtime, but you all figured out a way to not have to. So that's really neat. So how long have you been working on this before we get to the other interesting thing
One.
you've given to us? One. So how long, Tamagui?
I think it's like three, a little over even three almost, but around 3 years. It's always been a side project. Like I had a job at Vercel, I had a job at
Oh,
Uniswap up until recently. Uniswap uses Tamagui in production, so if you want proof that it does work and it actually can ship really beautiful apps, I think Uniswap is so cool because they
oh,
have a great design team, and they have a really strong team just in general, and they adopted Tamagui fully, so it powers their extension. They have
mm,
an extension for your wallet. They have the mobile app it powers, and it shares basically almost, I mean, I want to say 100%, but like almost 100% of the actual visual code that you see. Like obviously some of the frame, and there's some divergences, but it's all 100% Tamagui, and it's like 90% shared, maybe 100% Tamagui powering the mobile app and the extension, and then the website has been converting over, and the website is like the homepage is now fully Tamagui. The swap widget, I think they've launched fully Tamagui, and shared. Actually, that's kind of crazy. The swap widget, the main widget on Uniswap, is now shared across all platforms, so web, mobile, and extension. Um, Native, I guess, Android, iOS, web, desktop, and extension. So four different sort of things, which is pretty cool. And I hope that's working out for them. I mean, they was going pretty well, I think, and it's pretty exciting. But obviously, as a team, there's a lot you have to like, be able to test on all these platforms. So I actually was almost like, treat it as an experiment because you may want to not have them be too coupled, but at the same time, it's kind of cool because they had all these different features between like the web only had this like set of features that they wanted on mobile. Mobile had these features that they didn't have on web. It was kind of annoying, classic kind of case of like having all these different teams working on things. And so they really wanted that swap widget because it really is their bread and butter. And if they can ship, launch features across all three, it's pretty cool for them. So what was I talking about? We had some context there, but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, that
That
was kind of like it was always a side project for the last 3 years, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So, but it's been a
yeah,
fun one.
it is. And so I'm looking at Uniswap. Pretty cool. Looking at their HTML and just to see what's been and also the little bit of CSS. This is cool stuff. So
Their
yeah,
website
so you
is outdated. They're still on Create
oh, really?
React app. I've been yelling at them.
Oh,
That's why I was trying to get them to use one. I'm trying to sell them on it at some point because I think they could use it. But yeah, their website is like 7 years old. The mobile app and the extension are new.
nice. So cool
Yeah.
stuff. So great work with Tamagui. So what about that taste of yours, that, got us to the CSS and JSS, CSS and JS 2.0, as we're going to call it here, that you thought with all the Next.js, Remix, RSC, and everything out there, we needed a newer, better framework, we should call one. I want you to walk us like through that thought process because the classic meme. There's always something new in the JavaScript world, a new framework. No one likes a new framework, or they say they don't, but of course we all get hyped about it. So why one? So two questions. Why one? Why now?
Yeah. I know it kind of sucks to be a front end developer because we're not allowed to like innovate, because we innovate too much. It's like kind of crazy, right? Like and like people will laugh at that, like, oh, they innovate, they make yet another framework. But it's like, I don't know. I think this is such kind of bullshit, honestly. Like to frame, and it's only front end that really gets this because it's like this whole thing that I think people like just they don't it's a legitimacy thing, and I think there's honestly like an elitism, especially with like kind of not front end developers, where they think that it's like simple and it's bullshit, and it's it doesn't have the legitimacy. Sorry, by the way, my internet's kind of but I don't know. I mean, I think front ends, like, I think it's harder than back end. I think it's like, if you're defining it in a traditional way, like if you're defining it as like a sort of like backend that's handling a traditional front end app, like, and if you're looking at modern takes, like front end is dealing with 60 frames per second, interactions, animations, 4 different virtual machines that you're running on, 6 different types of like, input modalities. You have keyboard, you have touch, you have pointer, you have
Browser support.
I mean, it's insane. Like I always loved front end because of how many interesting problems there were there, and back end always seemed boring to me. I mean, not to keep firing, but like I didn't do back end because it was like, how many, what am I gonna write like an API? Like it's crazy. I mean, I know there's, databases are hard as hell. Like I have a lot of respect for anyone doing stuff like that. Like I don't really count that, but like I just think that like front end is so rich with these interesting problems. And I'm coming at things once again from this perspective, like almost like from that app that I was building a few years ago, where I was trying to build something that was like, going to compete with maybe Yelp, and I wanted to do it myself, in the same way that I felt like Rails really as a kid, I was able to go from, I could struggle to put together some PHP website or something, and then all of a sudden I could build like such incredible experiences. And I think that's always been my perspective of like enabling a small one person or a couple people to do things that normally would take a team. And so I think that's where some of the innovation from one comes in. I think some of the innovation also comes in obviously from this cross-platform perspective. And so those are the two angles that I think are very new. And obviously Zero is a big part of that. I think it sort of ties into both of those angles quite a bit. And so basically like the sort of the pitch of why it's necessary is just that, well, okay, if you're building a native app, you always are going to want to have things feel instant. Like there's just this requirement for things to feel instant. Like you need to have your mutations be, on the web we have a term for it, which is optimistic mutations, but like there's not even really a term for it with a native app. It's just mutating. It's because everything's optimistic, right? Like there's no such thing as like going to the server for the most part. Like, if you're building a native app, you typically are using a client-side database. Maybe you're using something like, I don't know, Firebase. I don't know if they parse, I guess was one, historically that was kind of like this. Like there's a lot of options. There's different like local sort of like database type options, but it's cheap. And you can do that on native because you can send like, a bunch of megabytes of data to their app. So you can, have fun and architect astronaut your way into like this really great stack and build better experiences. Like it's almost table stakes is the way I think of it, is like, if you're not going to have instant mutations and instant updates for everything that you do, it's going to feel terrible, your app. And we're building Tamagui, we're solving these cross-platform problems, and I think the biggest problem that the biggest annoyance and pain point was that there was just no good solution on the web to do this sort of style. And I had played with it, people give me shit because I really hyped up GQT a lot, and I love GQT. I thought it was so interesting. GQT.dev, GQTY.dev. Originally, it was GQless by this really genius kid, and then it was quite slow, and we were using it, and then like had various like problems just with him. Honestly, he was just kind of like not invested in it anymore and not responsive, and not he didn't let us publish or anything. So we just ended up just making GQT. It was a complete rewrite actually by someone I hired, not myself, and they just made it very fast essentially. But it's GraphQL, but it doesn't look like it. Like it just looks like, honestly, it looks kind of like Zero if you look at it. It's just a hook. It looks like, any Firebase, maybe like use query. You just kind of like chain these things. It has some weird properties. I'm not going to get into it, but like, needless to say, I just felt like this was the clear future. Like if anyone was paying attention when Meteor launched, I think the reason it was so hyped was because it was so obvious that like you just want to query your data in your components. It's like Tailwind. You want to just style your components in your components. You want to keep things composable and close together to where it's being used. You don't want to just arbitrarily have your queries over here and your styles over there. And like, why? Why would you? The building block of your app should always be the component. I think that's kind of the React revolution, and that's kind of what Tailwind is building off of. And I think like continuing in that sort of sense, you want to write your queries right next to where you use them. You also need them to be instant updating, and ideally with a local database so that they feel great and they update, but you also want them to sync, and there's this whole local first movement. I think it's kind of important to familiarize yourself with it. It's not necessary to do a great app, but it's encapsulates a lot of, I think, what you need. And yeah, I mean, the funny thing is I sort of lived down the street from Aaron, who was working on Zero. By coincidence, I was working at Vercel. My sort of like the CTO, I guess, or VP of engineering at the time. I think CTO, not sure now, one of the two. He was both, but kind of linked us together. He was just saying like, "Oh, you live in I live in a small town in Hawaii, and he was like, "Oh, you should meet up with Aaron. He's also lives in that tiny town in Hawaii." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know any. I didn't think anyone would live here really that's in tech, let alone someone who's working on such an interesting thing." And at the time, they were working on something called Replicache, which was more of a sync engine, I would say, because you sort of start to learn all the different terminology as you get into this area. But like sync engines are less of like a database, less opinionated. They just kind of like make it very easy to sync, cursors and like Figma style cursors and stuff like that. But you could also do state. But it was quite a bit of work. Like that was kind of my feedback. We were using it at Vercel actually for preview comments that I was working on. We were using Replicache, and I was giving him feedback like, basically it was just like no more complex than like, bro, make it look like Meteor. Like make it look simple, like give us all of it in one. Like GQT, I thought, solved this like DX problem so deeply and so beautifully, but it didn't solve the rest. Like it was not a complete solution. It didn't have everything you needed. And Replicache solved, they had such a talented team, and they solved the sync problem very deeply, but they didn't solve the like database and the ease of use like all in one. They were trying to be kind of like much more fundamental. And they were thinking about it to Aaron's credit and to my discredit. I did not come up with the idea or anything. I just was every step of the way please do it basically. And so I was very impressed that they basically were like, okay, we're gonna, we've thought about it. We think you and everyone else that's yelling at us to do this is right. And we're going to do the hard thing. It's going to take us a lot longer. We're going to have to rewrite Replicache essentially to do it the right way. And so they started on that, a while ago. It's like almost a year ago or something. I don't know, but it feels like a long time ago. They kind of started on zero. I was so hype, and I was kind of playing around with this framework. But just playing around with it, like I did a talk at VConf on VXRN where I just made Vite serve React Native. I mean, in parallel, I had been thinking like, man, React Native, the reason no one uses it for the most part, it's not that popular if you think about it, is because it's so complex to set up. And again, I think the code sharing is so hard. Like if you could really easily style things and keep things consistent, I think so. Like I went deep into Tamagui. I think I really solve things there that like no one else is really solving at the level that I am, to really make it fast on web and really make it fast on native, but also make it have all the features that you want. We mostly got that to the point where I think it was like, great. We released Takeout, which is our paid starter kit, and that had essentially Next.js and Expo router basically, or just originally it was just React Native with Expo, but like eventually we moved to Expo router, and then we used this library called Solito, which is the same friend of mine I think I mentioned earlier, Fernando, who built Dripsy, also built Solito, and Solito is this like bridge. It glues together Next.js and Expo and like React basically native. Um, Let me know if I think my connection okay.
Yeah, keep going. It's good.
Okay. Yeah. Long ass backstory, but like it has so much complexity. Like so many people coming into our chat just complaining. A decent amount of people just saying like, "Give me a refund," because it wasn't even that it wasn't working. It's just that like it's annoying. It's like I have to learn a monorepo. I have to learn 2 different sets of documentation, 2 different bundlers, 2 different frameworks. It's just crazy. Like it was so complex. And like, again, like I'm coming from a kid who loved Rails, who just like, it's like we're going in the wrong direction. Like I felt terrible almost just like having to deal with all this complexity. And we tried, really hard to simplify it as much as we could and make it, we put a lot of work in. I mean, it's like it saves you so much time, that stack. But at the end of the day, it's just, there's no getting around the fact that if you have 2 of everything, it's too much. It's one too many. So we sort of, I was playing with one for quite a while in some form. It wasn't until Aaron was really kind of like all in on zero that I was like kind of thinking like, I'm going to do this. I think you can compare, by the way, just to like, Expo has Expo router. They've been sort of working on a solution in the same area. We actually started some of the initial experience, we built VXRN, which was like a whole journey. And then I was playing with kind of like, I had been actually tweeting about this publicly for a while. Like there should be file system routes. There should be a unified framework. Expo announces that they're going to do Expo router. which I was like, cool. But you know, they're taking their time, and also they're very much a native focused company. I think in their DNA, they're coming around to web, but you know, Metro has these old issues that like it just did not support like importing assets, you know, like importing an image. It didn't support ESM. It still doesn't support ESM really. It doesn't support like there's no bundle splitting or code there's no code splitting, tree shaking, like all this stuff was like very shaky at best, if not completely missing, especially on web until very, very recently. I think they just landed some minimal code splitting, but it's actually, I think a friend of mine said that they have like a 10 megabyte JavaScript bundle using it. So it's like, you know, I'm just trying to justify like why are you doing it when they're doing it? But like to me, Vite is just like so great. And trust me, as someone who built Tamagui compiler, like if I can never touch Webpack again, no disrespect, but if I can never touch a Webpack or Metro, honestly, plugin again, it'll be the greatest day of my life. Like they're so complicated. Their API services were sort of evolved, and you know, like Webpack's the GOAT. They innovated and figured out all this stuff for everyone and saved us all collectively, you know, like a trillion hours of time. But Vite just really is elegant. Like the API services are beautiful, the types are beautiful, the JS doc is beautiful, the documentation is beautiful, the community is huge, everyone's using it. The new APIs that they do, like they publish RFCs that are like better documentation than, you know, Tamagui just in their RFC PR. Like these guys are amazing. They're doing incredible work, and Vite is like my dream interface. Like I'm bullish on JavaScript bundlers that use, you know, some native parts, but like still let you configure things and control things and use TypeScript, because I love TypeScript and I think it's great. So to my mind, it really balances things well. You're letting me rant, and I really appreciate it, man, because you know there's a lot to say. But I just think that Vite is like the ideal platonic ideal almost bundler. I think um, Zero is almost the ideal. If they can pull it off, it really is kind of like the ideal solution to sharing code between web and native, and like it's light. That's the key. It's not bringing along a whole SQLite database. That's kind of like the big thing that like most other local first solutions do. It just works with your Postgres. You can use your existing tables, which is amazing. That's something that like I think Rethink DB failed at, for example. Um, but I think they're just doing everything right on the Zero level to where it finally can align to where you can use it for like a website that's not just like an app website. Like, you know, you're not just building Figma or linear. You could actually build maybe just like a static landing page with it. And yeah, it's going to add maybe, I don't know what they're going to land at. I'm trying to get them to 50 kilobytes, no more. But you know, maybe they get to 100. I honestly think like as long as it's below 100, I think they've crushed it, and it's going to be used for like so many things. But yeah, I mean, again, like I'm putting together this whole picture, but I think that is the real picture, which is that um, you're getting this incredible developer experience, great performance, and you're actually solving all these problems that let you really share code in a way that's not just cheap and not shitty and not like degrading the experience on all the platforms. And I think Tamagui kind of, you know, it's in the same vein. Like it sort of is trying to do the same thing. We've got a long ways to go. We got to make things more standard and seem less weird. We've got to like, you know, document things better. We got to make it stable. But I do think that I think we've been chipping at this sort of like thing for a long time, and I think one is legitimately kind of a big step forward if we can pull it off. Um, and I think the final thing maybe to touch on is a little bit of React Server components. And all I'll say there is that I was just so surprised that it felt like a regression rather like I like them for a lot of use cases. I like pieces of React Server components. I think they're great, and I think we can adopt some pieces of them to our benefit. But I think putting the router on the server side is a fundamental mistake in terms of like user experience, because you never want to have your routing have to go to the server before it comes back to do something. And yeah, you can maybe do some very aggressive preloading and all this stuff, but like again, it's just building a client-side app without having to think about server boundaries is beautiful. It's so simple and nice to write. And so I just feel like that gave us like there's a lot of reasons why I felt like we had an opportunity. A big one was that it seems like for some reason these frameworks that I thought were getting better over time are moving almost sideways into this direction that is very complex, sort of solves like static web page problems, I think, pretty well. But like if you're thinking in terms of a more of an app, I think almost is like the opposite direction. And so I was like, well, I mean, if they're going that way, I guess, like I've got this guy sitting next to me in Hawaii that's working on what I feel like is a much better solution for a lot of things. And so let's do
Mm. That's
it.
quite interesting. So a couple of things that stood out for me is like the ideal one user probably, or the team, or whether it's a team of one or in a company, they're not just shipping for the web, right? They're shipping for the web, they're shipping native code. Like they want to one code base, the entire jam, right? One code base for mobile and also for the web, right? And then of course with Vite, it's faster, right? So you have this performance and then zero. I haven't really gotten much into zero, which I think you showed me in a bit. But I think so I've never had the need to build a universal app. Like everything I've built has been like online, like on the web, because
Mhm.
the web is an easier platform to build on. I just like the web. I've built native before with Flutter. I tried React Native back in the early days. Nope, wasn't for me. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
so
come a long
I
way, man. I totally feel you.
yeah,
I feel you.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I just had to nuke the entire thing and learned like Dot just
Yeah.
to build that project, and also learned like Swift UI back in the day. So it left this taste in my mouth where I'd be like, web tech for mobile, it might be, it's it will suck a little bit. I think it suck less now because I see a lot of companies use it a lot. React Native, what's Expo, there's um yeah, Expo, like, with Vue and everything, and all the tech that is in web. So definitely going to get better, but I want to see like with one, you're not just addressing like the web problem, because I feel like
Yeah.
you're like a bundle, right? So you do web, you do native. So for teams or people that are shipping like that, that's who you're building for. That's how I say it, right?
I mean, I almost want to ask you a question because here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to say this in the intro video too, and I think
Yeah.
it's maybe impossible to get around, which is that I do want to make the best web only framework. Like that is my goal. Like I am a web developer from the
Mm.
from the get. Like that's where I come from. I'm trying to make native feel, I'm trying to make native as easy to use as web. I'm trying to make web not have to sacrifice to also do native, right? Like these are my goals. But
Yeah.
I genuinely think that if Zero can keep their bundle size down, if they can ship these features, and if we can make one, which one works really well on web, it's way more stable on web now. In fact, it's been powering the Tamagui site and a few other sites that
Oh,
like the Tamagui Studio. The one website is built with one. We've done a lot of work too. Like I got so much content I need to create because like we've slimmed down. For example, like you can use React Native Web Lite, which is a fork that I made that brings the React Native web bundle size from like I think like from like 60 kilobytes gzip all the way down to like 10 or 15 gzip. So you can almost get rid of React Native web almost entirely
mm,
and just use Tamagui. And I think you end up with like 30, like 24 plus like whatever. It shares some of the internals, so it ends up being actually quite small. Like with the entire one framework, everything, the router, the framework, all the utilities, the entire Tamagui plus all the components plus like animation library plus all this stuff. I think the one website uses all of that, and it's like actually under 100 kilobytes of JavaScript zipped, and that's like including the Tamagui complete UI, and that's sharing all the code with native. And I'm actually pretty
mm,
proud of that because like to me that's like you can get 100 Lighthouse pretty easily, even on a pretty big page with that. So like I think we've like my hard problem is to convince people that it is actually just like a really good web only framework. I don't know if it's possible. And I honestly don't blame people if they don't think of it that way. And I want to try and figure it out. Maybe you can help me, but it may just also be that like, focus on you've got your niche and focus on it. But honestly, I would love to figure out a way to like really make that case. So I'm not
mm.
sure. Got to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So because I'm sort of like an historian with all this kind of tech, because I do like software. So when you mention you want to be like the Rails for with one, the only thing is you're taking on one complexity, which is the native complexity on top of it.
Mhm.
And now when you set up that expectations in people's mind, you got to do a lot to sort of like compensate, because of course you actually solving more surface area than Rails strictly web right now. They do
Mhm.
native but with something entirely, the hotwire native stuff, before it was turbo native, right? So but it's not Rails. So if you're using Rails, you know you're going to get like Rails like effects on the web. But now when I'm using one out of the box, it's in there for it to be both web and native, so everything is in one. So that's kind of interesting because it, except you figure, and now you, of course, with zero, like you mentioned, you're already thinking about, okay, the kilobytes are going to ship added to what you're going to have already, because you're trying to solve
Mhm.
this very, so it's a complex problem. It's not, it doesn't map one to one with, in fact, it might be even be harder in terms of like the surface area you're trying to do with one than Rails. So it's a little bit interesting. So we might just spitball ideas. If there's a way to opt out, which is more work for you, so just use
Yeah.
one as web, that would be interesting, right? Because then
Yeah.
the parts that are native won't be there. But I don't know how that would work for you. But that's just how I'm thinking about it right
But
now.
you can do it. Like by deep,
Okay.
like here's the nice thing. We're not running Metro. We're not bringing a bunch of dependencies in. The framework itself even doesn't have a ton of dependencies, like just on a like npx1 level. It's not that big. So you can just use div. You can just use CSS. You can just use Tailwind. It's Vite. It's just Vite. So like, and I think that's again,
Mm.
this kind of speaks to the issue. And this is why I do think like, I would like to figure out a way to make it popular on web. I'm okay if
Yeah.
it ends up being a little bit more focused on, companies that want to solve this universal case. And like, we're definitely going to focus a lot of our energy on making that really great. But um, yeah, I mean, you don't have to. It is just Vite, and it's actually quite a nice Vite stack in that, these render modes, for example, like the fact that you can just opt in on a per page basis to different, like, this is a client side, this is server side, this is statically generated. Like, it's actually really great. Like, we wrote an article, like, porting from Create React app. I think it's actually, I didn't even think about this much until after we launched it and wrote this article. But if you think about it, like, there's not a lot of Vite frameworks that have file system routing and that have uh, that sports SPA mode nicely, but and also give you a lot of features like typed routing, loaders, kind of like generate static params, so you can still do some pages that like it's cool. Like I really think that we're doing stuff that no one else is doing, and it's very simple too. Like it's just one command to run, one plugin inside of Vite, and just like it's not complex. It's just Vite. It's very easy to run, and you can just do your little web app quite easily. Not little, sorry. You can do your simple web app quite easily.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I mean, like it's cool. I think I want to make content. Like I think I got to become a content person. That's going to be my job if I want it to be successful. Is I got to share these great example apps, and I've got to make good content showing all the different things that we've done to prove our web credentials. But yeah, I do think the render modes, the fact that it's very simple to run, and the fact that it gives you typed file system routes and all this stuff, like again, the typed file system route stuff, we got a big boost from the fact that we did start with a port of Expo Router. Um, most of one I will say is definitely not that, but they that specific part, the file system routing and the typed generations from that, we did port and then have been working on like different sort of variations. But yeah, I just always want to give credit. But basically, like I do think that like it's just very cool to have that on Vite and to have that in a very simple package. And so yeah, hopefully we can get the content game together, and hopefully we can also just like prove that it's good.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it'd be cool to see people using it.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think
I
Zero can
think,
help a lot too. I think like if people like it, they'll check us out for that. I think that's kind of a big key is like, hey, like I just want to play with this awesome like data library, see if it's legit, and we'll make it very easy to do that.
yeah. And also you probably want to do more of the show and don't tell. So more
Yeah.
like classic dishes style was it 18 minutes video of the whole blog, but maybe not blog because something more
Yes.
interesting for the JavaScript folk, but like more stuff you could build. That's weird. Yeah, I think it's fine for you to do both, but you just have to now compensate by showing, okay, this works elegantly on the web, because on your marketing page, like for me, because I don't like abstraction too quickly. So now when I see a native, I'm already opt out because I don't do native,
Hmm.
right? So I
Yep.
don't know. So yeah, so I don't know how you spin that, but I'm definitely going to be watching because it's fun. So
Yep.
this has been fun. We spent like an hour just riffing over ideas, and we should get to code. Like, so let's see,
Yeah.
because I have to see how this work, both one and Tamagui. So you have to share your screen and let's see what you've prepped for us. I'm going to ask a lot of questions because why not?
Yeah, yeah. Also,
Mhm.
like, if you think I've prepped much, the joke is on you. I have made sure that it ran a few minutes ago, and and we can definitely just. I think I tried to fill the air because I'm trying not to code too much at midnight, but but this is gonna be fun. So we'll
Okay.
we'll go ahead and create it. We'll create a new app, um, and we'll just do Hello World, I guess. Oh, there's already Hello World.
Yeah. I think you should
What two?
bump up your font sizes a little bit. The classic
Oh yeah,
screencasters thing.
yeah, yeah. Is that good?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that works.
I can do a little bigger. Um,
Okay.
oops.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
Oh, you're
internet. I
using
hope this
Bun.
internet. Yeah, I got to do all the cool stuff.
Yeah, cool.
Um.
So
Oh wait.
don't really, yeah, you could not worry about the internet because Riverside would definitely record local first, for you. So
Oh
it's
yeah, yeah,
gonna
yeah.
come through really great at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna just quit that. I noticed when I was actually trying to install it or just earlier to test things out that like the internet. I think Bun is maybe even also maybe not as resilient or something. I'm not really sure what's going on, but because like our internet seems to work for the chat
Yeah.
at least somewhat. Um, maybe I should just
It
use
does.
yarn.
Yeah, let's
I'll
see.
try one more time.
Please, Bun, you're supposed to be faster than do this.
Yeah, it's definitely a network thing. It's not like a. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, again, proving that it's just Vite. One thing I will say is you'll notice the patching, and I saw some haters already hating on it. Listen, the React Native ecosystem publishes the wildest stuff. They publish Flow in JavaScript files. They publish JSX. They publish like Babel experimental stuff. So we just found, rather than doing magic in the bundler where it's like impossible to see, we just found that patching was actually so much easier because the magic is on the file system. You can actually just go look and see what it's done and like inspect it. So anyways, that's that. But yeah, let's just open it up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is our web app and simulator. I have a bunch of built. It's just Expo Go. You can
Oh,
use React Native. You can use React Native plain, or you can use Expo Go. Either one should work. It's honestly like React Native is pretty simple when you do dig into it. It's just JavaScript. So you're just building like a big JavaScript bundle and then hot reloading and stuff. But yeah, so this is our like very very simple app, and let's zoom up the font. Maybe too much, but so I will try and position things here a little bit. But yeah, so basically, this is a lot of the stuff is just kind of like personal choice. You can obviously configure things differently, but I think I tried to. This example is meant to be quite minimal, maybe too much zoom there, but so and again, I'm using Tamagui, but like here we can actually just show, I guess. Oh, do we want to jump off the deep end right away? You know what? Let's show things working first, and then let's break things in a second. But like, I think it's worth
okay.
just being like, just saving this, oops,
Mm-hmm.
and showing that like, okay, it is, we can change the height of the ball to be big or small or whatever, and you kind of get a feel for the fact that that it is quite fast. And we've got like really nice dark mode and light mode. Actually, if you refresh this, so if you look at this, you'll see like hello world. So it's actually SSR rendering. You'll also see there's no flickering. Like if I refresh that a few times, and if I change it, it goes between, by the way, to system in between, that system, and then light. And if I refresh
Okay.
again, you can see no flickering. That's because it's actually generating the right CSS. It's actually in SSR mode. It's extracting all of your CSS. These are themes, but it's also doing all the atomic class names. There's more than just that CSS too. It does some of the inline and stuff like that. But and yeah, you can see it's fully server rendering. This hello world, it's actually rendering on the server, just like it does in production. No flickering, which I think is really cool. That you do get like exactly the same production and development. So again, like I'm trying to make the case that this is a great web framework. I think even Next.js, as of last time I was using it in the dev mode, the way that it like injected CSS was like slightly weird, at least from what I saw. So like, and again, everything I say ends up getting fact checked by all the fact checkers. But needless to say, it's not trivial to make your SSR actually pull out all the CSS, optimize it, inject everything with preloads, server render, and do everything the same in development and production. So I just wanted to show that really quickly. But yeah, go ahead. I'll leave it there since I've been blabbing a bit.
Okay. So let's see. I think we should start off with the app structure, the rules
Yeah,
like part. Yeah. So let's see how, I see we have, okay, no, that's not the wraps, that's the wraps definition. So I see config, I know
yep,
config a lot because sales also have config, which is influenced by Rails. So
yeah,
let's see, just walk me through how, so this is my first time seeing one code base. What am I looking at?
yeah. Well, so
High
first of
level.
all,
Okay.
I'm talking to Mr. Sales, so I will say we're not, we're aiming to be Rails like. We aren't
Yeah.
as opinionated by far, and there's obviously I don't
Okay.
have zero. I didn't get zero set up, by the way, for this. I am sorry. Well, we have a branch. We have zero like in private beta, but I just it's a lot. They've been pushing updates like crazy, and we've been focusing on stability for the last couple of weeks. So I have not spent the time to like go back and like pull all the latest changes and stuff. So I don't have zero set up. I think it's fine. There's so much to cover, and like zero they have a ton of cool content coming out soon. They have a really sick demo that's coming out soon. But yeah, so like again, I just want to say that like at the current state, it's closer to like a remix than I would say like a
Okay.
full-on opinionated thing. And even config, I think this is my Tamagui config. I just put it in this config folder. It's not even. It'd be cool
Oh,
to actually throw some of this into the config folder. I always like that pattern, but I haven't done that yet. So this is just like I want to get us there to the point where we're much more opinionated. For now, we're just building up to it. So and like we'll hopefully have a more of a Rails demo here soon. Once we do have some cool stuff with zero like schema. Like an opinionated way to do schemas and migrations and all that stuff is actually in the pipe. So that'll be very cool to show off at some point. But I do want to I can show just a little bit here. I mean, I guess I can just show, well, this is the minimal example. There's not really much to show beyond like, we've got we've got our public folder like most Vite apps do. We've got, let's
mhm.
see, layouts. And then I think, what did I want to show? Oh, well, loaders. I mean, I think we've got loaders, which is a lot like remix. So I guess the function doesn't really matter. But I thought I'd show like sales is awesome or something like that, just to show that we can use a loader, and we'll see if it hot reloads. And what's nice is, oh, we need to log it.
Yeah.
So you can see hot reloaded on native. This is the native, gets piped over to here, and then on web, also hot
Mm.
reloaded. So I think that's really
Nice.
awesome. Like this, and what's really awesome is that these loaders, when you build it to production, it's all works. So like it will actually client shake this out. It'll take it out from your client side bundle on both of these. It will then you can serve it with an API endpoint, with the one command, npx serve. So you can see here, you got your dev command. You've got your clean command, or that just cleans the build folder. And then you've got build web, and then you've got serve. And so one build will build the web app. You can also do stuff like that, but like one build will build the web app by default, and it'll actually build all your server routes, your static pages, your client side routes, all that stuff. And then when you serve it, it's running a Hono server, and it's actually hosting all the API routes. It's actually hosting all the loaders as well, so that you can serve that and then hit those in production from all of this. So very cool. I think that you've got such a simple pattern now that was really awesome. I think on Remix also works on native.
That's interesting. So there's cool. So with so how does so let's do some routing and
Yeah,
let's see how that works. Let's make another page
sure.
and
Yeah,
also use some Tamagui magic because we're trying to kill
yeah.
two birds with one stone.
What should we just make up a page? I guess.
Yeah,
Any ideas or?
let's try and do something that have interaction in there. So maybe just throw a couple of login. Let's just mimic a login flow. It doesn't log in,
Yeah.
but just email password.
Yep. I can see
Then
my. There you go.
we could navigate from this homepage, put like a login link. I don't know. So do you use like a link component or like actual anchor tags? I don't know. So
You
okay, there's a
can
link
use.
component. Okay.
If you want it to be universal, you'll use the link component. But one thing that would be cool,
Okay.
I think, is to try and get.
Mhm.
I think you can actually get. React Native is working on React strict DOM, and I think it would be cool to get so it actually you can just use A and it works on native. That's
Oh,
it's not done yet.
nice.
This is actually my editor being annoying. I think if I what am I? Oh, it's late.
Block statement. Okay.
Forgot function.
Oh yes, I
Oh,
didn't
let's
catch
do a
that
link
either.
to the login page actually. So we'll do. We'll just do a link. And let's see if it may not have generated our routes. So this should update. It did update. So it is generating, you can see types for our routing. Let me see here. Let me see if I just restart my TypeScript server. If it picks that up. This link. Okay, well, there's also this interesting error, which I'm wondering what this is, types react or something. I guess this is something I have to look at, but yeah, we never claim to be stable, but we do have typed routing that's somewhat working. I guess just not working on this right now. Although, yeah, usually you would see the generic there, so I'm wondering why it's not showing the href. Let's see if href. Yeah, there you go. href has the login. So there's something, I guess, going on with link, but it should validate that and give you autocomplete, which is pretty cool, but let's just ignore that for now. Let's try adding a login button. Oh, okay. So the other thing that you'll have to notice is that this is something that I need to improve. But for now, I'll just throw it inside of a Tamagui. Tamagui's got the light and dark mode. By default, it's not going to give you light and dark mode out of the box because that's just it's not the default in React Native. I think this is another reason why Tamagui is kind of cool. It's just like kind of it has that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, we'll add a login link. We'll make it link to login. Let's go ahead and give our login page a button or something. Yeah. And we can do forms and stuff. You would want to abstract it. Tamagui does have a form, but let's just throw a button in there for now. See what happens. I have not tested any of this, so there's a good chance that this
Yes.
doesn't work. Okay.
What do we do?
We've got a route error. Let's see. Minimize. This may just be that hot reloading routes isn't as stable as I would like it to be yet. So let's just go ahead and reload it and see what happens. Okay. No, I mean, that would have been a miracle if everything worked. We can try a stack view, which may be nicer on native anyways. Let me try doing this. So this is a chance, I guess, to just pretend like this is, to show something interesting.
Okay.
Also, it seems like my types are just like something a little bit off, like the React types aren't getting picked up. But I'm gonna
Yeah.
reload this, see what happens.
I feel the types don't like me because I don't like TypeScript that much, so it might be a me thing.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now I'm thinking there's actually something wrong with my code because this definitely should work. This call stack is not symbolic.
Do
Type
you think maybe something
SSG.
wasn't installed because of the network?
No, I think this is either some sort of bug that, oh, cannot generate a valid navigation state for the given path. I think this is like, let me just try restarting. When in doubt, restart. It may just have gotten into we may just need to fix some sort of scanning issue with our routes. So we'll give it a shot. I don't mind. Like we can show the errors. Like I'm not trying to pretend like this is fully stable or anything. Yeah, okay. So it's actually not something. Oh, interesting. Not found route is maybe getting put there. Login. I'm gonna see layout, login, index, login. Try to see if I can debug this. There's a chance that if I just throw it into let's just call like an auth folder. Let's give it let's do a slot. I'm just gonna try something just to see what happens. And put that inside of there. Interesting.
Mm.
I want to solve it, but it's one of those things that like maybe is not solvable without looking at code, which is not going to be very interesting. So we can just let's just build our login form on the main page, and I have no shame in that not working. Yeah, we're very much in beta, so but
Mm-hmm.
should work. We have like our other examples have like tons of pages, so I wonder what we're hitting here. I'm actually quite curious, but I'll have to loop back to it, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Yeah, and we can look at those
Anyways,
pages when we're wrapping up so that we could see a full one app since our demo, because of the demo gods, not working today.
yeah. It's a real-time
Yeah,
demo, the
so,
first we've ever done, and also
yeah.
very much a just launched beta product. But let's go back to our slot here, just because I don't want to have to style this stack to look nice. But let's show off different things. Let's show off first, I think, styling. We may as well, and let's just make this look like a form.
Okay.
So throw in an input. So you'll notice that, let's see here. Oh, what's this? I don't like that I'm not getting types. Oh, I'm on the login page. I was like, why is web not updating? Okay, I'm just not on the login page, literally. Okay, there we go.
Mm.
So we've got like really bad styling, but that's just because, well, we haven't done much. And Tamagui is actually not that opinionated out of the box. Like you can customize these themes. So we could look at, you can customize it on the theme level. So we've got these themes, and I'm actually just using a bunch of the defaults. So I don't want to maybe go in to explain like a bunch of crazy stuff here, but we're building up a very fun, like kind of more advanced one. But I think it's much better just to kind of like what is annoying me is that like evidently the demo gods are really punishing us by not giving us any types anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, luckily I know. Let's just test this with like PG red. Okay. Yeah. So we've got shorthand set up. And I think we can do to get like consistent width. We don't want red, obviously, but we could do like, so you can do longhand, like border color, red, border color. You know, we've also got our tokens, and again, this should all autocomplete. I mean, this is like literally the Tamagui config. Let's see if our types here are flowing. Okay, our types are there. We're declaring Tamagui with the right type, and then we're importing from Tamagui. Oh, interesting. Okay. This may actually just be the fact that I cloned it into my home directory or something, and there's maybe some other Tamagui install. I may have like node modules like up here or something. Okay, I kind of hoped I did, but I don't. Anyways, Tamagui's types are super rad. But yeah, we're doing it live. But yeah, you have these tokens, so you can do like color 1, color 2, color 3, color 5, color 8, color 10, 13. I think 12 maybe actually is where we cap out. Yeah, so 11, 12. So you got the color scale that we've set up. You can customize this however you want, but this is just how we've set it up. Actually, it's kind of cool that we got stuck in dark mode here, because it's let's see, let's give this a height, just so you can kind of see that you can line up your dark and light mode, and use kind of like, you know, consistent styling here. We've got our button. So our button would need like a background color. So again, we've got shorthands, or you can do whatever you like. Let's do like color 4. Let's give it a gap. Again, you can use pixels if you want. Maybe you just want to do like 20, or if you want to use your tokens, these again, you can name these tokens however you like. These are just the defaults that I've set up for this. Your button, you could have, you know, border width equals 2 or something. Let's see, border color, red, just to show it, but you know, color 4, color 7 maybe. And then you've got, let's see, you've got all the different styling. Actually, I kind of want to show maybe like styling on, let's give it a little header. Log in. And, oh, we haven't set up any fonts. So font family. Let's see, can we just do sans serif? Yeah, we have to just use our typed fonts. So we've got like typed fonts again. The points of types are that they are amazing and not shown here, but that's fine. And then we've got, make this not look terrible, and make this maybe 250. And without types, it's also pretty tricky to figure this out, like all the different attributes, but you know. We've got labels. You can actually do labels that link together properly, also with types, and also with you know, the HTML4, and you tap it and it focuses the input properly on native and web. These sort of problems are actually, you know, you run into these when you're building cross-platform, and there's just so many of them. And I think that's one thing that's kind of nice about Tamagui is like, yeah, to have labels and forms and inputs and all these different things that you can do. But let's show some styling too, I think. Ooh, do I have an animation driver set up? That'd be kind of cool. Animations. Okay, so this is a cool part. So we actually are diverging. This is a platform extensions feature here. This will be actually kind of nice. This will give me a little saving grace too, just kind of like, hopefully. God damn it, now I said that. You got to pray for me, but we're going in. Animations Modi. So this is using, Modi is just a light library on top of Reanimated, but Reanimated is a really cool React Native animation library that does springs and everything. And then this is using a React Native feature that we implemented in 1 that is actually fully working across everything. So you can actually diverge. I think I showed this in the demo a little bit, but you can diverge On the layout, on the route level, you can diverge platform. You can even do .ios, .native, .web. So you can, any file, you can just sort of like diverge it between platforms. And so what we're doing here, this is like really showing everything together, which is cool, which is that we're using Tamagui's CSS animation driver on the web to keep things light. Because reanimated is like 40 kilobytes zipped of JavaScript. It's not light, to a web developer. To a native developer, that's like nothing. To a web developer, adding 40 kilobytes can be a deal breaker for your Lighthouse score. And this is like why no other, universal style libraries is really doing this. Like I think they're all leaning on either just completely forcing you to like use completely different libraries across platforms, or they're forcing you to like, use heavy libraries and everything. But what's cool here is that you can actually switch out your animation driver. And then these are typed. Again, types aren't going to work, so we won't show it. But when you do the animation props, you'll actually be able to autocomplete and see that how we're matching up. 100 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds, quicker, quickest, and we've matched them all up here. But we've given them different. We're using CSS here as transitions, but on here we're giving it like springs and stuff. So all that said, let's go ahead and do here. This will be just like a silly example maybe, but easier to see with like the text, I think. But we can just do like, well, first, okay, so one thing you will see is I think this should actually break because we've done an optimization that's documented in Tamagui, which is that if you don't have an animation prop, we don't include the animation hook, because if anyone who knows React, like hooks aren't free. And the animation hooks can be extremely expensive because they're calling a ton of stuff to set up the animations for these Spring drivers. So anyways, compromise we made is that we have a conditional hook for just animations. It's actually very easy. You can lint it, and once you like know the rule, you just know not to like add and remove the animation hook. You can also configure it if you don't mind the performance, but it's trying to give you really good performance. But let's just say we've got, again, my types are going to be annoying, but what do we call this? Quicker, quickest. So quick. So I actually expect this to, give me a hook error the first time you do that. Also, I guess I could save it again and it should clear it. But what's that? Okay. 10. Okay, maybe we just have to set a color. 10. Actually, I guess you can see it animate a little bit there, but not sure what's going on with that. That was weird, but let's do hover style, or let's do press style, I guess, because we are doing native. And you can do, we have the flat transformed style props, which is just CSS actually supports this too. But we can do press style, it goes to 2. So this is CSS. And then on native, this is actually a spring, and you can see it. Let's see.
Nice.
Let's try a springier spring. Let's try stiffness down, mass up, damping down. And let's use the quick. Okay, and then we may have to reload, not so sure. Yeah, and you can see it actually there. You can see it interrupt. That's kind of like a classic thing about what's nice about springs is like, they're fluid. I don't know if CSS I guess is fluid too. But yeah, I mean that's huge. Like the amount of time that you're saving. I mean, obviously it's the most ridiculous animation ever, but it's not just press style too. You actually get media queries, so you can do like greater than small. We've got typed named media queries. You can define them just like media queries in your config, which is I think is in here. Yeah, so these are my media queries. So you can say like, greater than small, and then you can say like color is green. So these shouldn't be, but then I don't know if you can see that. You could do scale 1.5 or whatever, So then, so you got media queries. If it's obviously on mobile, let's just do opacity half, right? So you got your media queries. You even got container queries. So it's just
Oh.
like Tailwind actually, where you can do group. You can give it a group name. I'm just gonna, I mean, like, don't need to show everything, but you can do group, and you can even, and man, the types here are so sick too, because it gives you typed naming and all this stuff. You can do like group hover. You can do group press.
Mm.
You can do just group and then media query. So you can do like group small if this is small size. So you really have a lot. Like all those features are very
Mm.
hard to implement, and they all work with the animations, which is pretty crazy, right? So you're getting like animations across all of these. You're getting all these very advanced queries. You're also getting it optimized by the compiler. Like just trying to show that like this is so much to kind of bring all together, and it is cool that it is getting close. I mean, running this demo, I already see like a couple things I would like to improve, but I'm actually pretty
Yes.
happy. Like I feel like that's this is you were just goofing around and not really trying to style this well, but you've
Mhm.
built a little login form
Looks
quite
good.
nicely, I think. Looks not bad for just messing around and mostly showing things off without types. So yeah, we'll leave it there.
Yeah, I love it. So this has been really dope, especially when you get to like see that out of the box it works on native as well. And I get to see like some Tamagui magic with the animation and the styling API. It's cool. So is there any other thing you want to show for Rapid, because we are way out of time? Because I think
Oh
we
yeah.
we spent too much time nerding out on the, and that's my fault because I was so much interested. But again, we're doing two tech in one show today, so that's fine.
Yeah, hope that's I turned that off. Hope that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I drank a coffee before, so I would stay awake. I think it worked a little too well. But yeah, man, no, I had a great time geeking out on the style libraries, and thanks for
Yeah.
letting me show this. Like, um, yeah, I'm actually honestly, I'm super happy that it worked as well as it did. Like, we had to
Right.
build that hot reloading. We had to
Mm-hmm.
build the entire, the getting the React Native to load was a journey in itself. I spoke last year at VConf, and that took me like a full 2 months, I think, before VConf, just getting it to load a bundle from Vite onto React Native and then hot reload it. It took me like a
Mm.
few months of like hard work, and that was fully a year ago. And then we sort of paused for a bit, and then we sort of started up again on this framework stuff. But yeah, I mean, needless to say that like the fact that you've got hot reloading on the same port, it's running one Vite server. There's no Metro. Same port, one server, one hot reload pipeline, one module graph in Vite. I just think it's super cool to have that simplicity around that and to be able to play around with. And like now the goal is to, as you can see, there's a couple of little rough edges. I think some of them were just demo. I mean, like the types definitely work. Obviously in Tamagui, the routes definitely work for the most part. We have a bunch of example apps and a bunch of projects that we've
Mm.
been building on it now. So I think I'll have to, of course, tomorrow morning I'll be poking around on stuff. But I appreciate you giving me the chance, man. And I know we're running late, so I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this and get a chance to check things out.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. It's fine. And thank you for doing this so late as well. So let's wrap up with like what's next with for with one, and like what do you wanna tell other developers, React developers, Universal, like what have you learned so far that you wanna share? Just to wrap up quickly.
um, no, I mean, man, we covered everything. I think I just want to say, I feel like I hope people have fun with this. Like my goal is just to have fun, just to like create things. I like building, and I like just kind of like making things simple and making things more easy and approachable. So give us feedback, join the Discord, build a fun project with it. Like don't do anything serious quite yet. We're still trying to get it to be stable, but if you have a weekend project you think it'd be fun, give it a try and join in the Discord and tell us what breaks, and we're just we're gonna try and make our own little world here that we feel solves some interesting and hard
Mm.
problems. But yeah, I think I'm just trying to, yeah, I think like sometimes our community gets very zero sum and maybe
Mm.
very competitive and all this stuff, and I would like to avoid a lot of that and just kind of like you know focus
Mm.
on doing cool stuff. So I appreciate you giving me the time, man.
Yeah, for sure. Good luck on one. I'm definitely going to be looking out for it. When it gets more stable, we're probably going to do something more elegant and grand, but it's already looking good. So great job, and thank you for coming to TKYT.
Yeah, thank you so much.